We've made our primer episodes. We've discussed the Clone Wars. We've discussed Rebels. Friends, the day is finally upon us. Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi has launched. Episodes 1 and 2 are live. We have seen them, and we're going to be talking them. All that and more after a commercial break that one of the Inquisitors may have control over, but they may be fighting over, but we certainly do not. Welcome back. I'm Matthew, your host, they, them pronouns. I'm going to let each of our guests introduce themselves as we jump into this conversation.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Use she, her pronouns.
Hello, I am Riki, he, him.
I am Paul. I use whatever pronouns.
Sounds good.
Except I will use your pronouns as you wish, of course.
Well, yes, for yourself. We appreciate it.
To clarify.
So let's just kind of start at the beginning. The episodes are live. We got to see them. What's your overall feeling about it?
So we watched them first last night and then again this morning.
Okay.
I think Riki watched them twice this morning. And I think I always just get so caught up in the first watch because I'm just so dang excited to see Star Wars that I super loved it the first watch through, and then again this morning after I had a night to think about it. A little more cynical. There's some things that concern me, but overall I think generally positive feedback.
I came in with a lot of questions, and now I have left these 2 episodes with not only those questions unanswered, but more questions.
That's fair.
So some confusion about what's been going on in the galaxy.
That's fair. We'll definitely get into that. Paul, what about yourself?
Yeah, I was going to watch them this morning because I was going to go to sleep early, and then I got a delightful text that they were available early, and I was like, oh, I'll watch them tonight. And then I watched them, and I didn't rewatch them this morning because I didn't really love it. There's things that I loved about it. There's things I really, really disliked about it. I did rewatch what felt like the gratuitous Order 66 scene at the beginning to figure out whether or not it was indeed gratuitous. I do not believe it was gratuitous, even though I would happily go the rest of my life without ever seeing another Order 66 scene.
Yeah, it's
but
like
I do
a staple
believe
of a Star Wars show that it has to start with Order 66 flashback now, or have a flashback at some point.
That's just pretty much required now.
So many different angles.
Exactly.
I remember watching it and feeling like I knew who Reva was. I'd seen pictures of the actress. And so I remember watching it and not feeling a little like, do we really need to see this? Until I saw a little black girl with braids. And I was like, okay, I see what they're setting up. It feels a little over the top to give it to us again, but I get where they're going with it. I have to say, I think there was a couple small things like that, and I certainly have some questions about where the season is going. But overall, I just absolutely loved getting to see these characters again, and getting to see Obi-Wan, played by Ewan McGregor, feeling just like that. Like, I've loved The Mandalorian, I've loved The Rebels, but all these things are fundamentally based on new characters and new stories, which I think for the most part is good. But for me at least, and we'll go into some of the details, this is just kind of my overall stuff. Getting to see Obi-Wan was great. I didn't have any idea this was a lot going to be about young Princess Leia. And I was so here for it. Because I remember actually kind of going into this, I was thinking, okay, well, it's great that we're going to have this, but it is kind of funny that we're still focusing on Luke as Anakin's child. We're not really thinking about how Anakin has another child. Oh, wait, no, actually we're talking a lot about Anakin's other child. Although only sort of, because I don't think they realize who Leia is. So yeah, I love that. There's a lot of little moments that just really worked for me.
When you say they don't realize who Leia's father is, who are you talking about?
You mean the Inquisitors?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the Inquisitors captured Leia because they know that Bail Organa was good friends with Obi-Wan, and that Obi-Wan would want to rescue Bail Organa's daughter, having no idea that Leia was Anakin. So there's kind of like an extra layer of irony there that the characters aren't aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, those characters. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does seem like it kind of bothered me that Leia knows she's adopted, which is was a little odd to me. Mm-hmm. It seems like if you're trying to purposefully hide Anakin Skywalker's children,
right?
Why wouldn't you just be like, no, this is the Organa's biological daughter, End of questions.
Well, biology, first off.
I guess.
And she, like in Return of the Jedi, she knows. Like, her and Luke have a conversation about, do you remember your real mother? Where she says yes, which now that we've seen Revenge of the Sith, we should say is impossible.
I mean, Jedi magic powers. But yeah, sure.
You could remember Dale. Yeah, the way I thought of it was, kind of biology, having a child. In the books, I don't think they fully established this in the show, but in the books, which are canon, the reason why she's a princess is because Bail Organa is the senator, but his wife is the queen.
Oh, okay.
And so I think having a queen, like, not be visibly pregnant and all of a sudden have a child, I think you kind of have to say it's adopted. I want to kind of go over more some of the things we loved and didn't love, but let's kind of just stay on Leia for a second. I'm curious if you got this impression. The fact that she, both in two different occasions, first with her cousin and then with Obi-Wan, is very perceptive about what's going on with them. I think that could be that she's just a very intelligent, very socially aware 10-year-old. But I got that as a sense of she has some kind of latent force powers that isn't quite being, no one's quite drawing the dots on. Is that how you all felt?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think her social skills are that finely attuned, right? Especially because she seems so patently unaware every other time, right? She just has little, like, flashes of insight.
Yeah, I agree that it seemed like some force powers, and it kind of points to the misogyny of, like, the whole thing that they're twins, but Obi-Wan is only concerned with Luke, and, they have a conversation with Owen Lars about, you just want to see if he's showing, force powers. And he's completely unconcerned about Leia, even when Bail is like, Leia's been kidnapped. He's like, not my problem.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily see that as a force powers potentially, but I can see that. Like, that makes sense as a possible explanation. I mean, I felt like she was kind of just very precocious, which sometimes is endearing and sometimes very irritating. And I would compare her to kind of like Omega, where this is one of the things where for me, just animation often works so much better when it's like children, and it's just like child actors, it's tough, and I thought she had some moments that were really good and some moments that were, just a little awkward.
Yeah. That's challenging. Okay.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I really liked her as an actress, but I can also see that I think in part because I was just so excited to see her as a character. I mean, even thinking about it, like, most of the moments that I loved most with her were about her interactions with others, Yeah. And we can get more into that, but I can see that.
I like her and her droid friend, really. Like, that was my favorite part, actually.
That was definitely awesome. Well, let's kind of step back a bit, just so for me, Leia was definitely one of the things I loved. I loved a lot of the character stuff. For you, Paul, let's first start with positives, then we'll go to the negatives. What were some of the things you really did appreciate about the show?
All right, start with positives. Let's see. I really do appreciate the choice to have Leia be a significant character. I think that's a great choice. And not doing that and kind of just ignoring her, I think would have been easy, but not very satisfying, right? Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense that we're going to get a fair amount of Leia and Obi-Wan, because from A New Hope, like, we know that he's the one that she asks for help, right? She sends R2 and 3PO to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, so it feels like this story might establish that, I really enjoyed, Tamara Morrison's kind of cameo, I guess, right? I thought that was a fantastic moment. I was like, oh, that's
the clone.
As the retired clone trooper.
And here, I just want to jump in for 1 second, because, and Paul, I don't know if you had the same memory. For me, growing up in New York City in the 80s, really, and 90s, one of the things I most remember is homeless veterans on the street, panhandling and things like that. And, I've certainly seen it continue with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and just all the stuff about how we don't often treat veterans very well. And so seeing that in the Star Wars universe as well, that we talked a lot during our coverage of the Clone Wars of what happens to the clones. And the Bad Batch kind of started to identify that. But here, seeing it, like, some of them, very much like veterans in our own world, are just kind of tossed down on the street. It it was like a 10-second cameo and it hit me so hard.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a horrible thing in our own world, you know. I do remember that as a kid, and I still see it probably as much again now, you know, like here in Vegas and in California. There's just tons of homelessness and a lot of homeless veterans. I mean, I have a cousin who was a veteran and killed himself, like probably not getting the, you know, the mental health care and treatment that he probably should have had available, you know, coming back from that. So yeah, I mean, it's just a tiny little scene that hits really hard. Yeah. And I appreciate that they put that in there.
It's the kind of thing that Tamara Morrison could become like the Stan Lee of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because there's millions of clones after the war. Where did they go? And he could just be like in a coffee shop working and stuff in the future.
I mean, I wonder if anyone else had this thought. My first thought when I saw him was, oh, that's going to be Rex or Cody or someone we know who Obi-Wan's going to be like, oh, hey, it's you. You need to help me. Having it just be just one random clone, I thought it was so much more powerful than it being someone he knew.
Because it's like that speaks to how many there are in the galaxy, right?
Yeah. And I think also like Obi-Wan's reaction to him was really interesting because I think there was like, perhaps I'm projecting, but this instant like fear, right? Because I mean, we got again re-traumatized with the Order 66 at the very beginning there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and like as we saw in Rebels, the Jedi when they come across clones maybe aren't like, oh hey, my old battle buddy, right? It's this immediate fear of like, this is the face that slaughtered all my people,
right?
So I think Obi-Wan has this like moment of terror, and then just like gives him the coins and tries to get out of there, which I think is also really powerful.
Yeah. Definitely. Anything else, Paul, you want to say on kind of more the positive side?
I mean, there was some good parkour too, you know? Oh, yeah, I do. It felt like, I was like, was she really that far away from them? I was like, they just want this much parkour. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed Tika, like the Jawa character. Like there's an actual Jawa character, right?
Yes.
Like, and to me, that's like sort of what Book of Boba Fett did for the Tuskens. Like this is doing a little bit for the Jawa, where it's like, this is a person now. It's not just random Jawa number 6, you know? And I enjoyed their interaction too. I thought that was well done. And you know, I mean, I think overall the performances of a number of the characters are excellent. Like Ewan McGregor, I rewatched the freaking. I wish they'd said like, oh, by the way, we're gonna have a 3-minute recap at the beginning, so you don't have to watch the prequels. I like fast forwarded through all the parts that weren't, you know, mostly just Obi-Wan, but like he's fantastic as Obi-Wan. You know,
he really is.
Yeah.
So, Riki and Sarah, what parts do you like? What are your positives about this?
Well, I love Inquisitors in general, you know, from our Rebels coverage, but also just like getting more lore of them and, you know, having like a list of all the numbers, like which one is this, which one is that, and kind of figuring out their hierarchy and watching that play out. You know, the jealousy and infighting between them is just classic like Imperial buffoonery, right? Yeah. Like they're always trying to one up each other instead of the enemy.
And I just got even I think it was definitely the Imperial buffoonery, but recently I've been rereading the Darth Bane books, which are legends, but they're about kind of how the Rule of Two was created, and one of the sort of central conceits of it, I think they've mentioned this conceit in canon, not in so much detail, but is that so much of the dark side of the Force is about personal ambition and never letting yourself be chained by anyone else, and, you know, through strength and power you break your chains. And so that, like, having numerous dark side Force users in any kind of, like, hierarchy of power is just never going to work. And I thought they did a really good job showing that. You know, showing, like, Reva, like, granted, she has her own motivations. We'll get into those. But just the constant back and forth between her and the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitor who's constantly, like, needling her and kind of trying to kiss up to the Grand Inquisitor by showing all the ways she's not doing the right thing. It just felt very... like, you're right, Imperial buffoonery, but also very dark side to me. These are all people whose just every natural instinct is not to work together as a team.
Yeah, and so the Inquisitor you're talking about, I think, is Fifth Brother, who is one of the characters on Rebels.
Right.
And we get to see him here. And very interesting to see him portrayed in live action, and the Grand Inquisitor too, as compared to animated.
Right.
Do you have more positives to talk about?
Well, we got Kenobi riding in Yopi.
Yep.
And giving it meat, which I'm confused about from a biological standpoint.
Does not look like an omnivore or carnivore.
Yeah.
Like,
who knows? Star Wars. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have more? Or are you...
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Paul that I'm glad we got to see, like, looks of Alderaan, and what you were saying, Matthew, about, like, showcasing Leia, even though I didn't love the performance. I really loved Kamal Nanjiani's character, Haja.
oh, yeah.
Just, like, that whole little arc, on, it's Daya? Is that the planet they were on? Dayu. Sorry. Yeah, the whole, like, interaction on Dayu, the, like, mild Breaking Bad references of, like, the spice factory. It was interesting that we got to see more than just Tatooine, because, like, I think you mentioned, we just had Book of Boba Fett, which was a deep exploration of Tatooine, I guess, however you want to pronounce it. And yeah, I'm glad that we're getting to see other parts. I liked Reva's parkoury backflips, and I like this, like, hint at her relationship with Anakin, how she's really impulsive, she's like a quote-unquote gutter rat. They're drawing these connections without explicitly just, like, telling us how she's connected to him, and I like that. I didn't realize until we went back and watched it a second time that that's probably Reva as one of the younglings at the very beginning of Order 66. It still hasn't been explicitly stated, but I mean, why else would they show that, I guess? Like, I assume that that's her. But I like that they didn't say it and kind of left a bunch of questions unanswered.
Yeah, the camera doesn't focus on her as a kid. She's definitely just one of the kids.
It's the opening scene is, like, her face, and then we kind of pan out to the rest of...
there is definitely a couple moments when she is kind of, like, when they frame up on her. But it's subtle. The first time through, like, I was like, another Order 66 scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I was like, wait, there has to be a reason that's in there, right? And when they reference kind of where she comes from, I was like, okay, I need to just, like, look at that. Okay, yeah. Yep. I took a like photo of it. Like,
nice.
I was like, there.
See, so I went back and watched the Grogu flashback scenes of Order 66 to see if there was any match in, like, the hallway combat, and it doesn't seem like there was.
That would be cool, though, if there
That'd be kind of cool, yeah.
I mean,
so we'll go into kind of depth with each character in a second, but just we can talk about some of the things we didn't love. And for me, there wasn't many things that I didn't love, but there were definitely things that I was sort of like, that doesn't fit the canon I know, so I'm curious how you're going to explain it. And one of them, for me, starts with Reva, because... This hasn't been discussed much in the books, in the movies, but again, in the canon books, one of the things that's been really kind of clarified is that Vader does not want anyone to know that Anakin is who became Vader.
Right.
Obi-Wan seems to know that, though according to this is how he learns it.
No, well, in Revenge of the Sith, he knows that he's Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he just doesn't know that Darth Vader's still a person going around.
Right, yeah, no, you're correct there. Because again, dude, cut off the head. Have you never watched a zombie movie? Don't just leave him burning. But anyway,
that might come back here. Oh, sorry.
I think in at least one Rebels episode, but definitely in some of the books, both with Tarkin and with Admiral Thrawn, it's very clear that Vader does not want anyone to know that he used to be Anakin.
Right.
And so for the Inquisitor to know that definitely threw me a little bit. The Grand Inquisitor dying, when we've seen the Grand Inquisitor die, I'm guessing it's a Cad Bane not really dead, or maybe, like, they can be brought back to life, who knows. But that definitely kind of was an eyebrow raiser for me. It's funny because I so love Leia's in this. I want a lot more off Tatooine, but I do want, I'd be very bummed if that was our only interaction with Owen. I do want there to be a lot on Tatooine, in part because I remember I liked what they did with the Tuskens, but I wanted a lot more. And given that the Tuskens are a huge part of the Kenobi novel, I was hoping that would be in this show. And that's the thing, we're already a third of the way done. Right. So, gotta remember, it's a short series. I'm not trying to have too many expectations, but there's definitely some things that I am I get here. Well, there's one other thing that I'm not sure about that I'll save for when we talk about Kenobi's character specifically. But Paul, for you especially, you seem the one who's the most negative. Or, just wasn't the biggest fan of it.
Yeah.
What were some things you didn't like?
Right. Well, so we've touched on Order 66. Then the whole scene in the beginning, which apparently was like maybe kind of an Inglourious Bastards nod, where the Inquisitors come in and they're like, do you know who I am? Like, do you know what I do? And they're like hunting someone who like the person there in charge is kind of trying to protect. Like, I didn't think that was bad, but I just don't enjoy those sorts of power dynamics at all. And spending a substantial amount of time in the first episode with that going on, just like, it's just not fun for me. It's like, this isn't why I Star Wars, And so I just verbed that. Okay. So like that's not a criticism as much as a complaint, sort of like, well, I didn't like that, I do think it's an interesting choice having the Inquisitors show up in broad daylight as like their first appearance. I think a lot of times some of the characters who come from animation don't look great in daylight, and like maybe a little darker, might kind of hide some of the like, this is a lot of makeup here. On the other hand, I think the idea of the Inquisitors coming in broad daylight and just bullying everyone speaks a lot to the power dynamics, which I appreciate in a story sense, but not in terms of like an experience as a viewer. Speaking of experience as a viewer, with like a Jedi working in a butcher shop, like I could go on a really long rant here. I won't. Like, personally, like, I would just make all the Jedi vegetarian. Like, I feel like it would jive more with like their theoretical philosophy, but like, it's just extremely unpleasant. Like, granted, those things looked like they were like painted yoga blocks. I don't think it was actually a huge amount of like real meat or whatever, but like I just found it revolting and was like, really, we're gonna start with this, and you're just gonna keep coming back to this. And when they got off Tatooine, I was like, fine, good, like enough of that. So yeah. And then the last thing that like really bothered me, kind of from a story standpoint, was like I liked Leia's kind of like questioning and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But like the whole like running away during a fight, and like, what do you mean if he's the real cat? You just got kidnapped. Those weren't fake kidnappers, and then this is the real kidnapper. What if you're also kidnapping me? Fine. But like, it's just, I didn't buy that. That felt like one of those things that then in the recap, they're like, so the plot could happen, And like, I just found that part like kind of annoying. All right, I'm done ranting.
Yeah. I definitely, that scene was not my favorite. I thought that I really liked the dynamic that it set up between Obi-Wan and Leia. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that went on way too long than was needed. I think it's really interesting what you say about the kind of power dynamic, because I loved that, and I thought it was so essential to what we're learning about Obi-Wan's character and him not being the hero type. And we'll talk about his character specifically, but I totally get it. Like, without any spoilers, I recently saw, Doctor Strange, which is directed by Sam Raimi. I have a lot of things I think about the movie story-wise and character-wise, but a lot of people love his style. I don't. And then that's where I can be like, yeah, I think it's a very good illustration of something I don't enjoy. I'm very glad other people enjoy it. It's just not my thing. So I appreciate you can sort of name that the same way of like, this just may not be the part of Star Wars you're most fond of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's things I think are bad, and there's things that I just dislike. And like, those are two different things, and there's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B,
Oh man, can I go even farther? Like, I didn't like the little speech the Grand Inquisitor gave, and I think it was bad. Partly because it's one of the big problems that I have with the dark side in general, which is just this ownership of the idea that they're evil. Right? Like, the parts I like about Star Wars are the ones where it's questioning, right? Like, do the stormtroopers know that they're part of this? Like, do they think they're fighting for the Empire? That the Empire is a good thing, that the Empire is bringing order to the galaxy? We're talking about those people who are like maybe unsure, and the Empire is just like secretly evil. Whereas when they're just openly like, the Jedi are compassionate, and that's why we're murdering them. It's a little like, it's upsetting, right? And I feel like that same, like, the Inquisitor coming in and giving the speech could have been like, oh, the Jedi need to take control of situations. The Jedi need to feel important, and that's why they can't stay away when they see blah, 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 blah. Instead of, like, they're compassionate, and their compassion is bad. I don't know. I didn't enjoy that.
I think that's one of the things that makes Vader such a compelling character to me in, like, Empire Strikes Back is, like, how much he just thinks he's right. You know, he's like, order, we'll bring order to the galaxy. Like, he thinks he's doing a good thing. And, like, that's one of the few things, like, in Revenge of the Sith that I feel like actually really works, is it comes around to, like, he's like, no, this is what we have to do. This is good. Right. You know, the Jedi are wrong. And here they're like, oh, the Jedi are, you know, compassionate. That's bad. It's like,
Well,
yeah,
especially because
weak, like,
that's something we see in our own world a lot, is that people turn towards more authoritarian governments after times of extreme chaos. You know, like Weimar Germany after World War I, or all the fascist movements at that time, or, you know, modern day America, like whatever it is. I liked it because I think to me it was kind of like that Inglourious Bastards moment. Is like, there is Anakin, there is other people on who we've seen, like Ventress and the Night Sisters, who are dark side but not mustache twirling. But the Emperor is a mustache twirler, straight up. Yeah. And I think the Empire is getting to that. The idea that some of the Inquisitors would be like that makes sense to me, especially because it's clear, I think, that Reva isn't. Like, I think Reva is much more interested in... And I think, as you say it, I think it would have been better if it was sort of like the Jedi have to get involved. They're kind of like, you know, not they would use these words, like White Knight Syndrome, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But even that idea of, like, trapping someone by their own compassion it's nefarious in a way that just, like, it didn't feel mustache twirly. It felt like genuinely, like, upsetting amounts of evil in a way that, like, in this universe, at least, I'm okay with. But I can also see it being like, there's a little mustache twirly scenery chewingness to it.
So I enjoy the trapping the Jedi by their compassion, right? I enjoy that that's what they're doing, and it does have that, like, I totally forget his name, but, like, the guy in Inglourious Bastards. Anyway, who's, like, diabolical and evil, but doesn't, like, the fact that you're just, like, saying it out loud kind of spoils the game for me, I guess. Yeah. Right? Like, do that. Like, chuck the knife at the guy's face and then just, like, figure out who uses the Force to stop it.
Right.
Great. Catch the Jedi by their own compassion. Let the Jedi hunt themselves. But don't, like, tell a room full of people we're out to hunt the compassionate people.
Right. Seems like a good way to spark, I don't know, the rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a similar dynamic later when the Inquisitors end up interrogating Owen, and they say, you know, she says the hands go first, and then when a woman complains and says the Empire has no jurisdiction in the Outer Rim, cuts off her hand, right? And that's, you have no jurisdiction, and now you're just, like, undermining your position.
Yeah.
And they don't care, like the Inquisitors don't care. Yeah. But the Empire, like, as an institution, does care, and they do kind of want to bring their brand of order to the Outer Rim. So it is undermining that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like Reva being the one to undermine that makes sense for her character. But yeah, I see
for
what
her
you're saying.
character, absolutely.
Yeah, because the Grand Inquisitor then keeps coming back at her and saying, like, the Grand Inquisitor at least does seem to feel like, and that's also where I wonder, like, how much Reva is she just working directly for Vader rather than the Emperor and all that. And,
there's a quota, though, right? They had to meet the quota of, like, dismemberments. It's Star Wars.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, like, here's another lightsaber cutting off a hand.
Right.
I guess, I'm used to it being cutting off the arm, but I guess, it is often just the hand.
Yeah. Luke, it was just a hand.
So, all right. Well, Riki, was there any other specific things you didn't like before we start getting into some of the specific characters?
Well, so yeah, I said I have left with more questions. My big, giant question is, what has Darth Vader been doing for 10 years that Obi-Wan is, like, suddenly surprised? Because presumably, like, what we understand of Darth Vader in this time is that he's out being the Emperor's enforcer, and also, along with the Inquisitors, hunting Jedi. And I know Obi-Wan has tried to stay separate from all of that, but you'd think he'd watch the news and like, hear about this fearsome Darth Vader guy.
Right.
I don't know.
Or Bale. Like, Bale's in the Senate.
Right, like
I
Bale
do
would
not
know.
believe that Bale has never seen Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think that Obi-Wan, like, I know, Paul, when you were saying about him working in a butcher shop, it upset you because it's very anti-Jedi. And, like, I agree that it's very anti-Jedi, but I think that's why it works
kind
for
of the
Obi-Wan,
point.
because he's just, like, trying to reject
Right.
the Jedi as much as possible. And so, like, I can believe that Obi-Wan has not heard about Darth Vader because he's hiding in a cave. Right?
Right. He's literally hiding
just
in a
like
cave.
riding his EOB into the town, taking the transport out to wherever this butcher shop is set up today, coming back, going home, maybe talking with, like, is it Tiva a little bit?
Tika.
Yeah.
So yes, but then he has a conversation with Leia where he's, like, very knowledgeable about the Inquisitors.
Right.
Sure.
Where he
So, like,
says,
how
like,
does he-
many of them are former Jedi who are now hunting their own.
Good point.
I think it comes down to just what has been a fundamental question for all of us since the prequels began, which is what happened in those 20 years that we went from Jedi everywhere to you're the only one who believes in this ancient religion.
Right.
And I was kind of a little bit like that, like, how many Jedi are actually still out there? How many people have a random Jedi on their planet who helps people enough so that people would believe a Jedi was helping them get tickets, which I definitely want to talk about him.
Right.
You know, and so all of that I definitely agree with. I think it's just a big plot hole that we're just always going to be dealing with.
Yeah. They needed to have more than 20 years. Or they needed to do the prequels differently, right? If you want the prequels to have, like, a fully functioning Jedi Order, well, fully functioning, but, you know, which has some issues, like, and you want them to sort of, like, spontaneously fall, you can't then go 20 years later and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're all that's left of your ancient religion. Like, you need that to be like 100 years. And, like, there's no reason they couldn't have just had it be 100 years and be like, you know, Padme was in carbonite free, you know, in hibernation free, you know, she was frozen in carbonite, right? And, like, then they unfroze her and then she died of hibernation sickness. And, like, you know, Vader and Obi-Wan lived really long because they're Jedi or Sith and, you know, they use the Force.
Obi-Wan and Anakin were some of the last practitioners of this religion that had mostly been wiped out hundreds of years ago. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You could have written the prequels totally differently that way also.
For more on that, by the way, there is an episode of this show where myself and Jeff Randall talk in great length about how we would have rewritten the prequels. Definitely check it out. It's our coverage of Phantom Menace and then the other prequel movies. So let's get into some of the characters. Obi-Wan is kind of obviously the star of the show, the titular character. I think we all think the acting of him is so good. I'm really curious about what they're doing with his character because here for me is kind of the central tension that I see. Like, I wanted sad emo. I mean, he's not emo, but you know what I mean. I wanted sad, guilty Obi-Wan. I wanted the Obi-Wan who was almost without hope. And I think we're mostly getting that, and the way he, you know, kind of lets the other Jedi die because he's not going to make the mistake that the other Jedi are making. But then at the same time, he still believes that Luke should be trained. So I am not clear. Has he actually lost hope, but he still wants to train Luke just because maybe that'll get back? Is he faking all the talk about lost hope because it allows him to stay hidden and justify to himself not helping this other Jedi so that he can train Luke when it comes time? Is it just a bit of an inconsistency that we haven't had resolved yet? What do you all think?
I think he is kind of holding on to the concept of the prophecy and the chosen one. And really, at this point, is putting his faith in that in an uncomfortable way. You know, we see. We're okay to talk about other shows, right? Like,
like
we
Rebels.
see in Rebels that Obi-Wan admits to Maul that Luke is the chosen one, where he says, "I believe he is."
Right.
So he's like all in on this, and I think he himself has lost hope or is not fighting. But he thinks if he watches over Luke and then at some point trains Luke, that this magical prophecy will take hold and Luke will handle it all.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's, like, keeping Obi-Wan alive is this idea that, like, Luke will fix the mistakes that he made, right? Like, he failed Anakin. Obi-Wan feels like he's failed in so many ways, but, like, his last best hope is that maybe Luke can fix things. And that's the only thing that he's, like, living for right now.
I think that really works, especially because it's not even just the feeling that Luke will fix it on his own. It's that he has to train Luke. Because I think on some level there's a feeling of like if he can be the one to train Luke and do it successfully, he can kind of earn, and I mean this in kind of a loose way, not some actual force way, but like find some personal redemption for his failure in training Anakin.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the only interpretation that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, I hated the thing with the other Jedi. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like, I don't know.
He kills him. He tells him to go back into town, and like surely that's what got him killed.
I know, and I'm like, back into like that's definitely not the place to go. Like, go far away from here. Maybe go to another town, hide in a cave, find your own cave. You know, like
in Obi-Wan's defense, I don't think the Jedi actually mentioned like the Inquisitors have spotted me, and also one of them has burnt my arm with their lightsaber. Right,
so, he wasn't very thorough in his
explanation of what's actually gone on.
True, yeah.
But no, Obi-Wan's advice is definitely what got that Jedi killed.
Yeah.
Bury your weapon in the sand and go back into town where the Inquisitors are waiting.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I mean, I think what Obi-Wan does definitely is part, like, he doesn't help, and so I think he is responsible for that guy's death. But I think what he was saying was hide the best you can. And at least my inclination is that the guy that he died because he wasn't able to do that. Like I think if he had actually fully followed Obi-Wan's advice, I think he might have lived.
Potentially, possibly. Like, the Inquisitors are after me in this town. Perhaps Obi-Wan's advice would have been go bury your lightsaber and then like take a transport to some other Outer Rim planet. Right there.
I don't think he followed Obi-Wan's advice. I also don't think Obi-Wan's advice was good.
Yeah.
You know.
Just as an aside, speaking of hiding, Obi-Wan stopped wearing brown robes.
Oh my goodness.
A supposed undercover mission.
Right?
You know, robes that are so iconic that this fake con man is wearing similar ones.
And just like lightsaber hanging right
Yeah. It's like, so they flash it to the audience, but I'm like, there's other people in the shot, you know? You know?
And maybe, since there are numerous vehicles that don't seem to be terribly expensive that zoom over the sand with, no marks, maybe not have a clear set of animal footprints going right to the cave you're hiding in.
Yeah.
All the time. Okay, so here's something else I got to ask about the cave. Because we had Danielle, who's TikToker, written in the Star Wars on for a primer episode. She's fantastic. I see also we have some comments. I'll respond to that in a bit, in just a moment. But one of the things that she said is that we agreed that when Obi-Wan says in A New Hope, I don't remember ever owning a droid before, it's kind of insulting to R7, who was Obi-Wan's droid through most of it. Maybe it's I think it's R4.
R4 is in There's definitely an R4.
But anyway,
we
saw C-3PO acting as a translator droid at the Alderaanian court, which fine, that's believable. That's clearly R2 buried in the sand, poking up his little thing, right?
No. That's not R2. I think that's R4/7. I can't remember.
I think R4 kind of bit it in Revenge of the Sith.
So it's Obi-Wan's droid is R4P17.
Yeah, I think it's like a chunk of R4 that he set up as a security system.
Right.
Or no, wait. I'm also seeing R4G9. I don't know, but R4 is the prefix.
R4 unit.
Yeah. I would like that a lot more, because I do feel like the attempt to get C-3PO and R2 into every single property stretches credulity at some times. And so I was just like, please tell me that's not R2.
Yeah.
False. Give me all the C-3PO and R2 that my body can handle. But
The Kenobi moment, though, that hit me the hardest. I'm curious, because I think I understood what it was meant, but then someone else on TikTok proposed a different theory. When he is saying to little Leia, you remind me of someone. She wasn't a Jedi. She was a leader. She could be stubborn. And Leia's like, I'm not stubborn. And it's like, yes, you are.
Yeah.
I teared up. I'm getting even like a little misty-eyed talking about it now, because to me, he's clearly talking about Padme. So at least that was my reading of it. But then someone else was like, no, he's talking about Satine.
Yes.
I thought he was talking about Anakin.
I want it to be.
Before he said all the things about not a Jedi.
Right. So here's my...
Sorry, Paul, I missed out. Do you think it's Padme or Satine?
I thought it was Anakin. Clearly it's not. I feel like everybody assuming he's a woman is like, I don't know, maybe reveals a little bit of some sort of things in society. But like...
Oh, I could have sworn he used
I think it's because he's talking about like a girl. Did
No, he first
she
says
was a leader?
No, clearly he wasn't talking about Anakin. But when he first says it, he's like, "You remind me of someone." I'm like, "Oh, she totally reminds me of Anakin."
And then he switches
Anakin.
gears.
But then Padme also kind of reminds me of Anakin. Like, there are things that they had in common that if they had had any chemistry and dialogue that was not like the worst, like I could see how that relationship would work, right? And Satine also has a similar kind of, you know, I thought you was talking about Padme, but
what I got out of it is that he might be talking. It makes sense to me that it were not clear if he means Padme or Satine, because to me this goes even deeper to what I've been thinking for a while, that it is his relationship with Satine that never happens, and her death that means that it's just he knows how hard it was to let go of that. He can't tell Anakin no. And to me, if Padme reminds him of Satine, which I think there were some ways they were similar, then it's all the more, how can I tell Anakin to say no to the person I came so close to not saying no to?
Right.
Our Silver Dreamer, Silver Dreamer in the chat, who is Will from the Hype is My Superpower podcast, great podcast on comic books. He says that he's Camp Padme. I think most of us are Camp Padme, but that's Satine. Sarah, are you a Satine?
Satine, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, 100.
1,000%. Yeah.
So just to recap, Satine in the Clone Wars cartoon was the Duchess of Mandalore, and there are several arcs with her and Obi-Wan where they talk about the fact that they had a relationship in the past, and she admits that she still loves him, and he says, "I would have left the Jedi Order if you had asked me to."
Yeah.
But then she's killed in that cartoon, and so that's one of the things we as Clone Wars Obi-Wan fans want to see, is him acknowledge, that property and that relationship, because it's so central to his character in that series.
But I think, also, Obi-Wan didn't have a whole ton of interaction with Padme.
That's
also
true.
Is part of it. And, obviously he had a lot of interaction with Satine. And Satine was, super sassy and super stubborn and really, took the piss out of him a lot of the times, which is exactly what Leia was doing in that moment. And then I think, seeing your friend's kid, thinking about, maybe I could have had a kid with Satine. This is who you remind me of, and getting nostalgic about that. But I also like that it could be either or, that they didn't specifically say, and that, it makes this connection that Padme and Satine were so similar, which I hadn't actually thought that much about before. So
yeah, I hadn't either. I will say there was one moment that I thought was also explicitly a connect Leia to Padme moment, even though it's from the books, which is, again, I'm sorry I'm talking about the books so much, but they're so being referenced in this. One of my favorite now Star Wars trilogies is about, it's called Queen's Peril, Queen's Shadow, Queen's Hope by E.K. Johnson. Wonderful books, but they do a lot about young Padme as a queen, Padme as a senator, and one of the things they talk a lot about is how much her and her handmaidens really enjoyed playing tricks on the guards by dressing up different people as the princess or the queen, in part so they could do important matters of state, and in one instance so they could go watch a boy band. Which is just a brilliant scene in the books. So having Leia do that, that had to be an intentional reference to that little bit of the books of
Well, I thought it was a reference to Phantom Menace, because isn't Padme's whole deal in Phantom Menace that she has
she has the handmaid
Keira Knightley dressing up as
right,
as
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And then one of them dies.
One of them gets blown up.
Movie.
Attack of the Clones.
She's like, "I failed you. That was literally you had one job, and you just did it. So you did not fail her."
Well, and
I will say, I love the interactions between Leia and Obi-Wan and that amount of sass that she gives him throughout.
I love those interactions. Maybe now we start talking about Leia some. The interactions between her and Bail Organa. Jimmy, by the way, a number of people have commented on the abundance of very attractive Latino men in Star Wars, between Cassian Andor and Pedro Pascal and Oscar Isaacs. Jimmy Smits has entered that conversation with a bang. Loved that, but also just getting to see how much of an influence he has on Leia. That whole thing about one day you can boss them around, and being so proud of her for tearing down her cousin, even though her mother wants her to apologize. Because I do think it's easy to see that Leia is just Padme's child, the genetics went out. But no, I think what we're seeing is so much of who she is how she's raised by her adoptive
Mhm.
parents.
Yeah.
Well, even I totally forget her name. I want to call her Baru, but that's obviously not her name. The Queen of Alderaan. It starts with a B. I'm so sorry, I'm blanking here. But she talks to
It's Beira.
Beira. Okay, she talks to Bail and says like, "Oh, like she reminds me of someone." And I think in that moment, like she's talking about Bail, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
like free spirited,
Yeah.
doesn't really care too much for the rules. Is gonna go run off into the woods and hang out with her droid and run into Flea. So that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, especially because we know from the Rebels TV show that Bail is one of the original founding people of the rebellion,
Right.
and he has Leia working missions for him when she's like 15.
Yeah, yeah.
In some of the best episodes where she has no problem bossing everyone around.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also, like, those conversations pull at the heartstrings because we know what happens to Alderaan. So when he says something like, the people of this planet will look to you, like, ugh, it just hits.
As a million voices cry out in terror.
Yeah. Jeez, yeah.
I mean, one thing that struck me is we've never really seen Alderaan. We saw a quick flash of it at night, or it might have even been in Coruscant with Bail and the Empress, the Queen, and Baby Leia, and we heard Cara Dune talk about how beautiful and wonderful it was. But even just seeing this like gorgeous planet where like technology has been well weaved into the nature, and like the buildings look like the mountains, and it hit me. I think they were very intentionally being like, look how beautiful this world was that got destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I love that we got to see more Alderaan. I love that 3PO was, like, hanging out in the background. Because it makes sense, right? Like, he's their droid. He should be there at a party. Yeah, just, like, all those scenes of Alderaan, it's beautiful. And, yeah, it makes the destruction of Alderaan all the more heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, Alderaan is basically like a planet that gets fridged in A New Hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like an entire planet of people that literally get killed just to have an emotional effect on Leia. Like, that's the entire purpose. And like having it be like, oh, this is an actual planet with people and trees and droids, and you know, it's like, it's great to see that.
Yeah.
But also like, oh yeah, they're all they're not going to make it. Yeah.
One other cool thing from the characters that I wanted to bring up, especially because it ties into those first 3 minutes of flashbacks, which Silver Dreamer, who I'd mentioned before, he points out that it sucked that we got flashbacks from the 3 movies, but nothing from the animated show, which I get why it'd be hard, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
So much of the character development, especially of Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme and all these characters, I think happens in that show. Even just voiceovers would have been great.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things... Go ahead. I have a theory based on that going in a direction, but you go ahead.
Well, we rewatched one of the trailers, and I think there's a voiceover of Satine in one of them where she says something like, "I have always loved you, Obi-Wan," right? Like, wasn't that in the trailer?
Oh, I don't know. When we rewatched the trailer, I was scanning for more Grand Inquisitor moments that we hadn't yet seen, and there are none. Uh-oh.
Well, I didn't watch any of the trailers very deliberately, so I'd rather like not too much delve into like speculation.
Well, you've
based
seen
on
most of it now. There's only like a few short scenes left in the trailers that we have not seen.
Let me ask you this, Paul.
Yeah.
Disney put out here are the episodes of the Clone Wars to watch to get ready for Kenobi.
Oh, yeah.
Would knowing those be a spoiler in your mind?
I mean, yeah, but like obviously I already know the answer to that, you know.
Okay.
Like,
well,
yeah. It's fine, whatever.
Okay. Because I'll just say that one other part of that is that one of those episode arcs is the Satine arc.
Right.
So clearly that's going to have some reference. But
yeah.
That's kind of going to what I was saying, which is that for me, one of the things, and I think I've said this on a couple of our primer episodes, I really want Liam Neeson Qui-Gon Jinn to come back. And so when during the opening because, you know, we set up in the show and in the movies that Qui-Gon Jinn is the first Force ghost, and that Yoda says, your master will come back and talk to you while you're waiting on Tatooine. And so I was like, I hope we get Liam Neeson. And it's not 100% sure yet, but when one of the flashback scenes was that, you know, telling Obi-Wan, you'll get to talk to your old master, I went crazy.
Right.
I had to actually pause the show and make a TikTok because I was so excited. And like hearing that Obi-Wan is still calling out to Qui-Gon, like maybe we won't get it, maybe it'll just be silence, but I think we're going to see the words Liam Neeson on a credit at some point. Yes, it's going to make me super happy.
I think I commented to Riki, like, it's Chekhov's Force Ghost. Like, you're going to set it up in scene 1, and we're going to get the payoff, but probably not until, like, episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
But it still gives me that, again, like, what has been going on for 10 years?
Yeah.
Like, based on the ending of Revenge of the Sith, I would have thought that immediately Obi-Wan and Force Ghost Qui-Gon would just, like, start chatting it up.
Well,
but it seems like they're implying that it has been 10 years and he still has not been able to make contact.
Oh, yeah, I got a different implication. I thought what we were seeing was that Qui-Gon has made contact, but it's sporadic. Because when Obi-Wan wakes up, he's not like, oh my god, is it true? He's like, Qui-Gon, is that you? Is Master Qui-Gon, is that you? Which to me made me feel like it has happened already, just not very often.
I see, okay. Different interpretation with that, like, he's been told by Yoda that this is a thing that can happen, but he's, like, gone all out in his rejection of the Force, that it just, like, hasn't happened / can't happen. Like, we see when he's trying to, like, force hold Leia from falling off the building, like, he's struggling. Yeah. Right? So, like, he's not really, like, connected with the Force anymore, so I think having, like, Force Ghost Liam Neeson come back isn't a thing that he's particularly ready for, so I don't think it's happened yet, and I don't think it can happen, because he's, like, not...
Yeah, I mean, that would answer why it hasn't happened. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm just what else does a Force Ghost have to do? You know?
Yeah.
Like, are they busy? Are there a lot? Yeah, just chill with Yoda. Be like, I like it here on Dagobah.
Well, but that's why I like Sarah's explanation, that maybe, like, Qui-Gon is kind of knocking at the door.
Right.
But you have to be attuned enough to the Force.
Yeah, it does give me sort of like flashbacks to like Last Jedi and the whole like, I've shut myself off from the Force, and I'm like, I don't know. Here with Kenobi, I feel like it potentially makes more sense, like where it is like he did go through a really big trauma, right? And I do also though wonder, like, really, like, just 10 years? You're just like, what is your plan, Obi-Wan? Like, you're gonna train Luke, or you're not gonna train Luke, but you're, like, not gonna train Leia, and, like, I don't know. Just like,
I think his plan is that he's waiting for Obi-Wan. He's waiting for Luke.
Waiting for Qui-Gon, for Luke to
show.
But, so here's the thing about that's weird to me. And I wonder if they're gonna rectify this, and this might be one of sort of the many questions you have, Riki. Like, in Return of the in Empire Strikes Back, Yoda's like, no, too old to begin the training. He is like, okay, if at some point he's too old to begin the training, and in fact Anakin was what, like 10 also or something, I think, and they were like, oh, he's too old. He's like, first of all, if someone's too old, what you're just supposed to let them go around unsupervised Force using? Like, that sounds like a great plan, but like. Also, but like then if Luke's 10 and Leia's 10, it does feel like, I don't know. I'm not optimistic that we're going to get a satisfying sort of something where that all comes together, but
see, I actually am satisfied with it, because my memory of that, and granted, I've not seen Empire for about 6. I watch these things about once a year at least, about 6 or 9 months, but still, I've seen it a lot. Is that Yoda's saying he's too old? But then Obi-Wan is kind of arguing back and saying, like, you know, he's not.
Well,
and to me, I think part of the point is that Obi-Wan has realized that maybe the taking them at that. To me, this is kind of saying that the problem wasn't that Anakin was too young; it's that they should have waited even longer.
It wasn't that he was too old; it was that he was too young. Is what you're saying?
Exactly.
Maybe.
And especially because we've been talking this a lot on our Star Wars Rebels coverage, which check out on this podcast. You know, granted, Obi-Wan probably doesn't know about these people yet, but at some other point, well, no, because it hasn't happened yet. We've got 5 more years. But in Star Wars Rebels, we're going to see other Jedi who are much older and who break a lot of the rules of the like the Jedi, who are doing just fine.
Right.
So, but yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those things where it's like, kind of like with, you know, Anakin, Reva knowing that Anakin is Vader. It's like, that's breaking what we've been told. So you need to acknowledge that and tell us why.
Right. Yeah.
I also think, like, it probably has a lot to do with, like, Obi-Wan and his feelings, right? Like, he's waiting for the right time, right? He's waiting for Luke to show that he's got powers. So it's like, instead of being proactive and like testing Luke or like really battling with Owen, he's just in this holding pattern of like, well, just gotta wait here on Tatooine until Luke starts showing Force powers, and that's what I'm doing. And like, this idea of like pushing and trying to jump at any sort of opportunity is just like so far from his mind, right? Like even like when Bail comes and is like, "This is my daughter, go help." It's like, nah, I gotta wait on Tatooine and spy on this kid all the time.
Well, especially because we know that like one of the worst things that happened to Anakin was taking him away from his mother. Yeah. And that he was just never able to get past that. And so I can, granted, like, Luke doesn't seem to have like the most loving relationship with his aunt and uncle, but they love each other. They're close. And I can imagine Obi-Wan also feeling like, a teenager who's ready to leave home would be one thing, but taking another 10-year-old kid from his parents, maybe not the best idea.
I don't know. To me, it feels so like height of depression, where it's like, are you going to do this thing? And it's like, yeah, I'm going to do the thing. Don't worry about it. I'm going to do the thing. Hey, Owen, we're going to do the thing, right? It's going to happen? Cool. I'm going to go back to my cave and hang out.
It's PTSD depression, where it's I don't want to make a decision. I want someone else to make the decision for me, because I think more than anything, he just is carrying so much guilt. And and that's what makes, I think, I think that's what, to me, makes the thing with the Jedi so heartbreaking, and why that motivates him in the end, is that, as well as with Leia, that he felt like there's not any way I try to help this Jedi will wind up with him dead. But then I don't try to help him, and he still winds up dead.
I think one thing that's going to happen in the course of this show is that Obi-Wan is going to realize that Leia is showing some Force powers or ability to connect with the Force, and then he will kind of switch gears and be like, oh, hey, Bail, by the way, Leia is showing Force powers, and Bail and maybe Beira are going to push back on him and say, no,
absolutely not.
We don't want her involved in this. She's our daughter. Like, you do your thing with Luke. And that is going to like push him back from this brink of like being ready to train somebody. And because we know like he doesn't end up doing anything until A New Hope. When it's basically forced upon him.
I hope that it happens. I also hope maybe it's already happened a little bit already. Because that would kind of address your point, Paul, of why is he just focused on this one kid and thinking that Luke is the chosen one instead of maybe Leia.
But
misogyny.
Yeah. But it seems like he hasn't wanted to do anything with Leia for like a long time, right?
But I'm saying, what if Bail Organa from the beginning was like, don't you dare look at this
child.
like
ahead of time?
Yeah.
Oh.
They did sort of decide, right? Like, Bail is going to look after Leia.
Yeah.
Owen / Obi-Wan are going to look after Luke.
Right.
That's how we have split this. That is the assignment.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's sort of like we're trying to find modern ways to justify the fact that because of it's a story told originally in the 70s, in that time, everyone just of course you care about the male kid. You don't care about the sister.
I mean, even now, right? Like,
yeah. I think if they wrote it today, it wouldn't have been quite so. They would have had to find more of a justification for why everyone was not even thinking about Leia.
Potentially. I mean, or it could be like Shang-Chi, where it's like he's clearly just thinking about his son, not his daughter, Although that was a point in the movie, so,
Right,
so
exactly. Yeah. All right, anything else about Kenobi and Leia? Should we move on to the Inquisitors and talk about them for a bit?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so I'll start with just actually a question from our chat. Silver Dreamer again asks, is it worth talking about if Third Sister, Reva, had Force powers on the level of Kylo Ren, Rey, or Starkiller, she could have stopped the cargo ship from escaping?
Yeah, I definitely thought that. I was like, why aren't you doing literally anything to stop that ship at the end of episode 2?
Because it's much more satisfying to yell, Kenobi!
So the plot could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, like Ahsoka does it too, right? In the end of the Clone Wars, doesn't she try to stop Maul from getting away?
Yes,
I think so. Yeah. I think we established in the Star Wars Rebels, which, by the way, for those who haven't seen it, where the Inquisitors come from, that they're powerful, but they're not like Sith. Like Maul could have probably wiped the floor with any of them.
Right, and does
does actually.
Yeah.
And like
Spoilers.
Reva isn't even as powerful as the Grand Inquisitor, right? Like he's able to push her around,
right?
Like nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't think she has the ability to stop a freighter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just like things are inconsistent. Like those two things, right? Like she's not the most powerful Force user, and Force powers are inconsistent. It's like they work when you want them to work, basically.
Yeah.
And you being the writer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. She works when the plot wants it to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say, and starting, we talked about this in terms of the makeup and like daylight. I know the Grand Inquisitor doesn't look like the Grand Inquisitor in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't care less. I feel like it works. His look works. He looks intimidating. He looks inhuman. And I think that we can talk about the sort of like humans' first nature of the Star Wars universe, but I mean that in like he looks distinctly alien in a way that is meant to be scary and intimidating. And like we could play with that some and call that problematic, but just for what it means about the character, I think it, I think he's intimidating and scary. I think that Reva, the rivalry among them, I'm really loving. What do you all think of that? How the Inquisitors are playing a part so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine with the appearance of the Grand Inquisitor. Like, when things change from animation to live action, they're gonna look different. Like, Dooku doesn't look anything like animated Dooku, and we're fine with that. Right? I would rather have this than, like, bad special effects.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we went with practical effects, and that I'm fine with the way he looks. I love his interactions with Reva, and that, like, he and Fifth Brother seem to have the, like, catching any Jedi is catching a good Jedi, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Reva is solely concerned with catching Kenobi. And Grand Inquisitor just being, like, pissed off at her about that is great. Like, when the first Jedi in the saloon kind of runs away, and Fifth Brother gives him a little bit of a chase, but the Grand Inquisitor doesn't do anything. Riki is like, why wouldn't you go after him? There's 3 of you. Because he's much more concerned with, like, talking down to Reva than about catching this Jedi, right? Like, that's his main priority now, is telling her off. And I really like how Fifth Brother talks to Reva and saying, like, you're too impulsive, right? Because this is all stuff that people said to Anakin, right? You're too impulsive, too much emotion, too single-minded. And so I like that they're building that connection without explicitly building that connection.
Definitely.
Yeah, I felt like that, them not chasing him, I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, what do you mean? Yeah. But, like, I can see that sort of character interpretation, and that it kind of works that way.
Yeah, the Grand Inquisitor has never run in his life.
Right. Yeah, he just walks menacingly. Yeah. Like, that's his move. Not a runner.
Yeah.
Grand Inquisitor never running.
I really like Reva's character. I think the parkour is great. I like that she's not just following orders, that she's kind of off on her own thing. And I think one of the things that makes her character most interesting is, and I've seen some discussion about this, I'm curious where you two fall. As I took it, I think we are meant to feel like it is not clear how much of her desire to catch Kenobi is because of her own personal feelings towards Kenobi. Because and I think that's because in some way she, like, and we've seen in some other things, especially the Jedi Fallen Order, that often many of the Inquisitors are former Padawans who feel like their Jedi Masters abandoned them during Order 66, and so they have a lot of anger about that. I imagine there's some part of that. I have some ideas about why, but also that it's also because she really hero worships Vader, Anakin, and I think what we're clearly learning is that Vader is very much aware that Obi-Wan is still alive and is very much hunting for him. So yeah, I'm very interested in seeing where that's gonna play out, because I kind of felt like it's left very intentionally unclear, and probably even unclear to her which of those two motivations is bigger. What'd you all feel about that and her kind of single-minded focus on Kenobi?
I think she knows her motivations, but I'm glad that we as an audience don't quite know it yet. My interpretation is that it's because she's got a thing going on with Anakin, in some capacity, whether he's, like, training her to be her apprentice, they're just, like, friends or something. But yeah, I think, like, she knows what her motivations are, and I think that it's purposely been left for the interpretation of she's a Padawan who's upset that the Jedi Masters have abandoned her after Order 66. But I don't think that's why she's doing it. But I do think she knows why she's doing it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So in the comic books, I believe Darth Vader after becoming Black Suit, Vader goes off on this quest. And when he comes back from it, the Emperor says, by the way, I want you to lead these folks, the Inquisitors, and introduces him to the Grand Inquisitor. So the Order of the Inquisitors and the Grand Inquisitor himself are set up as, agents of Emperor Palpatine, and then Vader is put in charge of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think what might be going on is that Vader sees Reva as his personal replacement for the Grand Inquisitor, and that's why she's so loyal to him and knows that he's Anakin and is after Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When she even says, like, when the fifth brother is asking her why she's so hell-bent on getting Kenobi, she says, like, I need to get what I'm owed. Right?
Right,
So,
exactly. So I theorized that Vader has promised her the position of Grand Inquisitor if she brings him Kenobi.
And, like, maybe more than that. Like, maybe, like, you'll be my apprentice, and together we'll rule the galaxy and overthrow the Emperor, right? It feels like these Sith are just always looking for the person to be, oh, you're going to rule the galaxy with me, and then we'll kill that guy. No, we're good. We're good. Yeah, no. Oh,
Well, I mean, that
we're fine. Don't worry about it.
Again, this is from the legends, but I think it's very much come into canon. That was the idea. The rule of two is one person to embody the power and one person to crave it.
Right.
With the idea being that eventually the apprentice is supposed to kill the master and take over.
Yeah.
Once you
which is very
become
weird.
strong
Like, like this is a group where you were always going to be murdered.
Right.
Like that's your goal. But yeah, so I think it just
That's your goal.
It just fits so much and all. I just love all this dark side stuff we're going to explore, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that. And just a woman of color playing an important role in Star Wars is just it's pissing off the fanboys. So I love it.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had a female stormtrooper too.
Yeah, I mean, she's got to be Finn's mom and that woman's mom, right? Because she's like the only
other
black woman in Star Wars ever.
Yeah.
So, but like, well, it's nice to see progress.
Yeah.
Even
but
when
yes,
it takes
her
a long
last
time.
name is Calrissian. That will not be progress. Let's have numerous different, utterly unconnected.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, I think Paul's just being sarcastic.
I am being very sarcastic.
I was going along with the joke. Yes.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, don't write us angry emails.
Right, yeah.
We have gotten some angry emails when someone didn't understand one of the New Yorker's sarcasm. So
So the Grand Inquisitor is dead?
Yeah, let's throw the tiger on the table and yell at
We
it,
know
right?
he's not dead because this character appears later on. But what do we think is how is he not dead?
I mean, I've never seen a Sith apparently die and then survive. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I mean, my guess
Grand
is just
Inquisitor returns.
somehow, exactly. Somehow the Grand
oh God!
Inquisitor
Actually,
returns.
now that you say that, because I remember that was one of the things that made me roll my eyes somewhat about. I think it was season 2 of Mandalorian when they started establishing that like cloning technology was something they were working on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe it's gonna be a clone of the. I want to believe that either he's not dead or that like he is sort of already. Like, remember, he was a temple guardian for the Jedi.
Yeah.
So it's possible he already is kind of a zombie version of the Grand Inquisitor. And maybe they just have a way to keep bringing him back. I think now maybe there's a possibility that this is going to be more setting up how cloning exists in this world that I really don't want to see.
Oh, that wasn't really my implication, but I can see that.
No, I'm taking with it, running with it.
Yeah, with the somehow, yeah.
But this is them this is the Emperor practicing the cloning of Force users to get it ready for himself.
Oh, right.
Honestly, okay.
Wait,
so when you first saw that, I was like, ugh, no. But
the Grand Inquisitor is Snoke. Dun, dun, dun.
Jeez.
Is that where you're going?
No, just like practicing, like he's practicing the cloning technology. I don't hate that because it does give us a bit of an explanation instead of just like, I don't know, clones, whatever, go with it. Because also, like, the other explanation is like, they wanted to tease Grand Inquisitor for Rebels fans, but also knew that he was more powerful than Rivas and needed to get him out of the way, so then they grievously injured him, which feels like a big kick in the teeth, because like, why would you use this character who's like so specific to like such a subsect of the fandom?
He got
why would you get such a great actor to play him too? Unless the actor was like, I'm going to do one episode and that's it, or 2 episodes and that's it.
Flea. Anyway, yeah.
This is a problem I have with a lot of properties, is when they have a previous best, strongest villain, and then you bring a new villain along who just like easily knocks them off to establish like how much stronger this new villain is. Like that's what I feel like happened here, and I didn't like that.
But it's not even like he's that... Okay, yes, like, we all know and love the Grand Inquisitor, but I don't even think he's, like, that established. Like, to me, if this is what's happening, it has, like, WandaVision tinges of, like, we're gonna bring in this character who, like, the deep-cut fans will know and love and get so excited about, and then, like, J.K. lol them and just, like, off him in the second episode. Like, that would make me very upset, and I hope that that's not what's happened. I hope that, like, either, like, Grand Inquisitor is just, like, out of commission for a little bit, so Reva gets to make this power play while they're maybe, like, fitting him with a Darth Vader-y stomach situation, and we still get to see him, but, if he's actually I mean, I don't know, if he's dead in his clones, that's also interesting, but then why doesn't he come back after they kill him in Rebels?
I think if he doesn't stay an important character, I would definitely be disappointed. I think he will. If nothing else, because I think just making Reva in charge, so much the interesting thing is how can she work within his control while still undermining him at every turn. And I think it'd be boring if we lost that already.
Are we 100% sure that this Grand Inquisitor is the Grand Inquisitor from Rebels? Or is that a title?
But he looks... Okay, Grand Inquisitor is a title.
Okay. He looks a lot like him.
He looks a lot
he doesn't
like
look
the
exactly
Grand... there's
like
obviously,
him.
like, coming to live action differences.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's his brother, but I don't know.
It does seem, though, like a very Disney Plus kind of way to, like, hoodwink people. To tell people this is the Grand Inquisitor, have everyone go, no, it doesn't look like it, and then later give us the one who actually looks like him. Like, I will hate that, but that to me would be a very much like, no, I'm a boner joke. I'm not actually Wanda Maximoff's brother.
Right.
Yeah, but like that, he looks enough like the Grand Inquisitor. Like, I feel like Fifth Brother looks less like Fifth Brother.
Oh, right, sure. Yeah. But he does look like Fifth Brother. You could see it, right?
No,
you're like, oh, that's clearly
like,
Fifth Brother.
Got that silly hat.
He's got the hat. He's got
hat.
the green face.
It's
clearly Fifth Brother. It's enough Fifth Brother that I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But I think Grand Inquisitor looks more like cartoon Grand Inquisitor than Fifth Brother does. And nobody... Well, I don't know. Maybe there are people who are very, very upset about it, but... There's
people who are very, very upset about everything. Okay, I'm upset about the Jedi in the butcher shop. Someone is upset about the makeup. Like,
I'm upset about the way Princess Leia runs. It's, there's everybody.
Yeah. I'm upset that she knows that Anakin is Vader. Like, we've all got something.
We all got something.
I'm trusting Filoni will make it make sense, but we'll see. The last big character I want to talk about, who I think is kind of my favorite character, at least of the new ones. Haja Astri, who's the fake Jedi. I love this because he's the scoundrel. Like, we need a Han Solo somewhere around here. Although all that time going through the criminal underworld, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was kind of like Hondo. Like, I was hoping for Hondo. But for me also, I love this character in part because I think it exposed a really important part of Kenobi's character, which is that. Yes, he's a con man. Yes, he's making some money. But it was very clear to me that he helped those people get to safety onto the ship, using his own powers. That aren't Jedi powers, but his powers of, like, bribery and relationship building. And so I when Kenobi was like, no, you're just a scoundrel. You're just making money. I thought Kenobi was a little wrong. And I liked that was proven true when by the end, the guy's like, no, I'm here to help you. I do help people. Yeah. I just like credits, too, because they buy things. And I was like...
Yeah. No, I absolutely love him. And I think, like, Obi-Wan has maybe a reason to be upset, because it's like, I'm heavily persecuted for being this, and here you are playing pretend, what the fuck guy, or what the heck guy.
That's fair. Sorry. I haven't considered that part, but yeah, that's fair.
Right? But, yeah, I love his explanation, too. Like, I got them there safely. I'm not, like, sending them into some trap. Mm-hmm. They're gonna get off the planet. I just have a few more credits, and they have a few less. It happens. And he's just so charming, too. Mm-hmm. Like, it reminded me a lot of, like, Kumail Nanjiani's character in Eternals, who was the best character in Eternals.
Yeah.
Hot take. Where he's just, like, he's a scoundrel. He's, like, a little sewer rat, but he's charming, and deep down, he's gonna do the right thing.
Yeah. I liked him in Eternals. I thought his character, like a lot of the others in Eternals, didn't really get the full justice he deserved.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of being a little bit too much of he's just the Bollywood star. So I really love that, like, he's getting it's a different kind of character, but still some of the same like super personality, but a little bit smarminess, but from such a different direction. And I love it. And I was definitely gonna be sad if he like died nobly fighting Reva to save Obi-Wan.
His plan didn't make any sense, right? To slow her down.
I mean, kind of. His plan was like, okay, first of all, I don't think he knew that she could break into his mind and just find out where they went. Right?
Yeah.
So his plan was like, I'm gonna just fight with her for a little bit and like stall her while they get on the cargo ship and go.
Yeah.
And then the fact that she just easily broke into his mind and was like, ooh, thanks for these coordinates, bye.
Yeah. And then left him alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Because he's gonna be back.
Right. Yeah.
She read the script.
Yeah, she read exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be something going on here. You know, he tells Obi-Wan to take Leia to, I think it was Morpuka, and says something along the lines of, there are people there that will help you. So he has connections to something.
Right.
I don't know if it's like a budding rebellion or if it's like Jedi survivors, because the fact that he is playing a Jedi as a con man,
right, I
think maybe implies that he might know or like have some connections to some Jedi, in fact.
Sure.
Yeah. To me, the simple fact that like Reva has every reason in the world to kill him at that point, or at least to take off his hand, and the fact that she just kind of like leaves him is like, oh, okay, he's still important to the plot. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But also, I mean, too unimportant to Reva, right? Like, you're not actually a Jedi. Why do I give a poop, right? Like, whatever. Thanks for the information. Bye, sewer rat. In your like bathrobe, not Jedi robe. Yeah, I love that detail too. That he's like wearing like a velour robe instead of the like linen robes that the Jedi wear. Anyway, it's all great. Yeah.
I will say, I figured out he's a con man very quickly. But I was kind of hoping, I mean, pretty obvious, clearly, the mind control over the radio. But I was a little disappointed at the magnet part, because where I thought they were going with him was that he was someone like the character in Rogue One, who has some, like, very small Force abilities. And that we're kind of showing is that it's not like it's a binary, and either you have the Force enough to become a Jedi or a Sith, or you don't. But that there are people who have like little bits of abilities, and I would have kind of liked it if he had that. But I think it's also totally fair that he doesn't, and we may still find out he still does just a little bit.
Which character in Rogue One are you talking about?
Donnie Yen's character.
Okay.
Yeah, the blind.
I haven't seen Rogue One in a long time.
It's the blind person who was kind of like a sort of a monk on Jedha.
Oh yes. Gotcha. Yeah. I was thinking of the boy at the end of not Force Awakens.
Oh, Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, who does the broom. Yeah.
The Jedi JJ forgot.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the Jedi JJ forgot.
Also true.
Finn would have a word, I think.
That's a discussion for another podcast. Or another episode of the same podcast.
In fact, you can go back and listen to them. There might have been some ranting involved.
We might have discussed it some on our episodes about Rogue One, and our episodes about Last Jedi, and about Rise of Skywalker. Sorry, what the hell?
Rise of Skywalker. That's actually the name. You're just surprised that you got it on the first try, because who wants to get the name of that movie right on the first try?
But we love Rey around here. This is not Rey bashing. Don't come at us for any of that in the comments.
JJ bashing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not bashing anyone.
Aww.
I disagree with some decisions that were made. I think there are some movies that are worse than others. But as a fandom, I think it's important that we not bash anyone involved in this process that has made something in good faith.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. I mean, for me, it's more about attacking the decisions and, the quality of the work rather than the people, right? I mean, it's like unless somebody makes something that is intended to harm, or maybe does some unintentional harm through, their bigotry or whatever, like, it's not a thing to attack somebody over, right? It's
I think that's very
but it doesn't mean not criticizing, like being like, hey, I think you did a shit job on this,
And the thing is, like, I first want to push back and be like, clearly that's what we mean, but the fact is, the fandom hasn't known that. Like, we were joking, we're not even joking, we were talking honestly about this before we started recording, that, I had a much better I had a much better feeling about the actress who's playing young Leia than the rest of you did, but we all agreed that, like, whether or not you think she's better or worse than Jake Lloyd was at playing young Anakin, the fact that a 10-year-old actor, 9-year-old, whatever he was horribly bullied to the fact that he thought about, doing real harm to himself or ending his own life. And same with Ahmed Best, the actor who played Jar Jar, because fans didn't like them. Like, that's garbage, folks. Like,
Totally.
I think if you're listening to this podcast, you know that. But Riki, I do appreciate that. I try to be more careful with the language of, I don't like these people's choices. I don't like what they're doing. But yeah, they're good people. Or at least I have no idea if they're good or bad people. But
they're people.
Yes, yeah. We're not basing that off this.
Yeah.
They have made properties that ultimately we still love, like as a whole, even if we rank them lower, as movies or TV shows. Like I still love the prequels because they are a part of this fabric.
Yeah, I think it's good.
So I appreciate them for making them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And I would have done it differently, but also I don't have like a writing degree or any practice screenwriting or directing or anything like that. So it's easy to say from my couch than actually doing it. But yeah, I think like JJ bashing was maybe a strong word. JJ critiquing. How about that?
There you go.
Is that good?
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm still going to bash Zack Snyder, but that's the only one.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm kidding there. I'm kidding. But no, I agree with that. And I love also the term you used about the fabric, because there's a point I want to make in a later podcast, but kind of just, to me, when I think about the prequels versus the sequels, I feel like there's a flip-flop in that the prequels add so much to the texture, to the fabric of Star Wars, while being technically, in terms of movie making, like acting, directing, dialogue, quite terrible. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think the sequels are the exact opposite, in that they kind of tear apart a lot of the fabric, but have some great characters and writing and dialogue. And but anyway, that's I just dropped a huge bombshell and said let's move on, which is kind of unfair of me. But
Back to Kenobi, perhaps.
Back to Kenobi. Anyway, what you also the point I think I was trying to get to with Asajj Ventress there, we never finished, is just that, to me, I think part of what it reveals is that Obi-Wan doesn't have enough faith in people. That he jumps immediately to thinking this guy's a scoundrel, which he kind of is, but then he's so surprised when the guy comes to help him at the end.
Yeah, well, and Leia calls him out on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it so tough to believe someone might actually be trying to help you? And
apparently,
in Obi-Wan's mind, yes, it is, because so many people are trying to kill me. You saw my face on every bounty hunter's arm.
It's pretty rich coming from her.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
but also, forget about her for a second. His distrust is well earned.
Right.
This is even Paranoid's head. He has a very well earned distrust response.
Yeah.
But maybe he can help to start getting past it.
People he fought on the same side as for 3 years tried to shoot him in the back repeatedly, and the person who he trained from the time he was a young boy, tried to kill him, and all the other Jedi, maybe it is hard to just trust people. I would say he doesn't have a lot of faith in people. I would not say he doesn't have enough faith in people.
Yeah.
I would say he is perhaps overly quick to judge, but I don't know. I don't think people necessarily merit faith. I think people...
It's a well-earned defense mechanism.
Right. Yeah. So, I think, maybe he judges people too fast, but, being skeptical, I think that is healthy. And in the position he's in, necessary for survival, really.
Mm-hmm.
It is fun. The article that I found, so I was looking up the character's name for Asajj Ventress. The picture of it is a picture of him saying, "So judgmental," which is kind of funny given this whole conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Hasaj? I thought it was Haja.
I think it's Haja.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, Haja Ventress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Played by Hassan. No, not Hassan. Played by Kamal Nanjiani. Yeah. Jeez.
Who, by the way, completely separate from anything else. But if anyone's The Big Sick is a relationship he did. It's a really fun take on a rom-com, because most of it's about what happens after the rom-com ends. Mm-hmm. Great movie. He's very good in it. And apparently it's based on his real-life experience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're now plumbing the depths of the IMDb pages of different characters, different actors. So is there any of the last things you want to say? Go ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of plumbing the IMDb pages, I noticed an interesting name in the credits. Anyway.
Is it bugging you that we haven't talked about this actor yet?
No. I've mentioned Flea plenty of times.
Oh, Flea.
The fact that was Flea, I was like, what? And then, cool, and I'm glad he only did a 2-episode arc, because,
I couldn't tell.
I don't know. He's a Red Hot Chili Pepper, it's fine.
Who was
he could technically still be alive.
The bounty hunter.
The bounty hunter, it's
the main bounty hunter who...
Oh, okay.
Vect.
Got it.
In fact,
Yeah.
no crew.
He didn't have a
Yeah.
base in his hand, so I didn't recognize him.
It's fair.
He wasn't wearing a sock on his, like.
Yeah, he wasn't naked
yeah.
except, time, etc. No, I wanted to talk about the spice saleswoman who comes and encounters Obi-Wan and says, like, oh, I was someone's daughter once too. It is played by Ewan McGregor's daughter.
Oh, that's really cool.
Right? Which is just like a fun little,
That's-
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
you guys.
Watch that dialogue again. It's pretty
Yeah.
funny with the context.
Yeah.
I just like that scene because to me that was a very intentional. Like we've talked about this before, and I think I may feel strongly about it more strongly than others. I hate when Kenobi is like, "Oh, you tried to sell me a death stick. I'm gonna now like mind control you to like be dare on steroids and make you stop drugs and stop selling drugs." And I kind of love that here he's like, "Whatever, you're selling spice, kid. That's fine."
Yeah.
And not only that, but he takes the spice and then uses it. He
Right,
doses
yeah,
people with
weaponizes
spice
it.
to like
Yes.
get away. So
And then we do get like such a stretch of an acting performance, Flea pretending to be high. I don't know how he got there, but yeah, all love. But yeah, no, I agree. And we like Riki and I have been talking about, oh gosh, what's his name? It's like Sleaze Bagano or something really subtle. Is the Death Stick salesman's
Oh,
name.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and it was nice to have that reference and have Obi-Wan, not break into someone's mind to
Right.
enter a spice, like, refining facility. I don't quite
Yeah.
know what they were doing, but not, like, destroy the whole situation. Just, like, make a beaker explode as a distraction and then go in and, get Leia, get out.
definitely. And are there last things other people wanted to point out?
I've got a list.
We
I think I
talked
hit
about
them all.
Jawas. Talked about delightful animal writing by Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's all I.
Yeah,
I just wanted
I
to
think I'm good.
Call out with the Jawas. I did love the whole thing of like, if you're going to steal my pieces and sell them back to me, at least clean them.
Right,
Yeah.
The
yeah,
guy
yeah,
should be
yeah.
like, cleaning's extra.
So much sass. I love
Yeah.
sassy Obi-Wan. We get the sass there. We get the like, oh, must be a lot of shadows talking with Haja. Like, yeah, I just like Obi-Wan's beaten down and sad and looks very old, as Leia keeps pointing out. But I'm glad that like animal-loving sassy man is still there deep inside.
I mean, he still looks a good 25 years younger than Alec Guinness, who
Oh,
he
yeah.
will become in 9 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But the Sons of Tatooine.
I mean,
Alright.
if he just keeps sitting in the Tatooine suns with his binoculars and no sunscreen on, of course he's gonna look like he's aged 20 years. What do you expect?
Yeah, he does look like he's aged more than the amount of time, right? Than the
Mhm.
10 years. So,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sunscreen people.
Yeah,
This is-
exactly.
yeah.
Well,
oh,
so no, we are not transitioning. We are no
Oh.
longer being sponsored. That was
oh,
not
right,
what's about to
okay.
happen.
I thought
Uh,
I was going to have to show my boxers. No.
Nope.
Uh,
Not gonna happen. But you can show things, and that's what I was going to transition to. Because for
Oh,
all you who are
right.
listening, you do actually now have the opportunity to watch as we live record it, or to even watch it on video later. Paul, tell us about the audio-visual version of the Star Wars Universe podcast.
Yeah, so Star Wars Universe Podcast and Superhero Ethics are now largely going to be available live streamed on Twitch, twitch.tv/ZenMadman, and on YouTube on my Zen Madman channel there, which is like youtube.com/user/ZenMadman or something. I don't know. On YouTube, if we could get to 1,000 subscribers in the not super duper distant future, it would be awesome and really help us in terms of like putting more effort into that content. And I'm also making some like videos from like right now I'm doing videos where I'm like playing poker and then listening to the old podcast and kind of heckling past me and Matthew. And I will
Mostly past
eventually try what?
Mostly past Matthew. But
Mostly
yes.
past Matthew. Fair. I'm often I'm pausing the recording, saying something in response to something Matthew says, and then unpausing it, and past me says literally the same words, which is fairly hilarious.
It's too consistent. It's
So
good.
then I get to laugh at myself as well. But I'll probably, I mean, if people like the format, I'll stick with it. And, eventually I'll probably work through like all the Clone Wars episodes that Matthew did with Riki and Sarah. And I think that would be really fun. And otherwise, I might just like find another way to kind of put some of the old ones up so you can have them. Because some people, like, I just listen to music on YouTube. I just like open up YouTube and just click around and listen to music. So yeah, anyway, you can check those out there. This podcast will be available there as well if you want to see, our vision, our facial reactions and stuff to things. There's a lot of nodding sometimes. There's some surprised reactions on the one we did on Moon Knight and mental health. Sarah had some really exceptional facial reactions to various things.
There were at least a couple times where I would ask her a question and she would just make a very evocative facial response. And I had to remind her, this is radio.
Right. This is also radio. And of course, everything will still be available on all the audio formats. And, you should use those too.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. Zen Madman on both Twitch, but especially on YouTube. And this we kind of announced with just a few minutes notice, but we will be regularly recording our episodes on the rest of the show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. If you're in the mountains, kick rocks. We just, for whatever reason, we've never had a guest from the mountain time zone, so we just never talk about it. But yes, that would be 5:30 mountain time zone. If you want to kick rocks, do it. That's your constitutionally protected right. Just not at somebody else.
Poor rocks.
With that. Anyway.
Poor rocks. Poor editing Matthew. My goodness.
Yeah, have fun with. No, I'll leave all this in. This is the fun catch-all stuff. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So definitely check all that out. And of course, if you want to find more about these podcasts and all the other podcasts I do, and most importantly, how to contact us, go to theethicalpanda.com. We were responding to some commentary in the chat room today. We love feedback. I've already seen a couple of emails have come in while we were recording this. I don't want to get into them right now, but we're going to do a feedback episode. I think we may well be doing 2 Kenobi episodes a week. One is the quick response, and then the other is kind of a longer thoughts feedback. In part because I have so many great people I want to get on these casts. So those ones at 7:30 Eastern on Wednesday nights are going to be with myself, Paul Hoppe, and Ashley Coffin. And then we're going to do response ones probably on Sunday or Monday with Sarah and Riki and possibly some other rotating guests, possibly Matthew Carroll from time to time. We'll see what can happen there. So please check out all of those great things that are happening. And on the Ethical Panda website, you can find all the ways to contact us. Send us your thoughts. Send us your feedback. We'd love to have them. Love to read them on air. Love to, if you don't like my sartorial choices, then let me know. I can find different colors of bow ties and suspenders. Let us know. All that's on theethicalpanda.com. So on behalf of myself, Sarah, Riki, and Paul, thank you all so much, and have a great day.
I feel like we need to mention Riki's Twitter, which is, was it Wikipedia Go on Twitter?
It is.
It is?
Oh, okay.
But it's like Riki always running.
Sometimes I thought you didn't want me asking you every single episode, but yeah, I can.
I just wanted to say it because it's like you go by Riki always running, right? And just because we mentioned the Grand Inquisitor, who's never running. I just, it felt apropos.
Running.
Okay, so I'll take that. I'll just insert that to.
Oh, or this could be the stinger.
No, that could be our outro.
I don't know.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
All right.
Sorry to cause so many problems. I just like making jokes. I'm here for the memes.
Cue the music.
Hey, you want to buy some death sticks? I don't know.
Is that what Voice the Goddess?
Yeah, it's like a very high-pitched voice.